What we're going to be looking at today is Shakespearean and Jacobean comedy. And we just want to start off by breaking the ice by asking you to think about your expectations of Shakespearean and Jacobean comedy, specifically its structure. What is its shape? How does the comedy start and finish? And what does it do in between? And perhaps as a group, after a very short discussion, just 2 or 3 minutes on this, you could draw as a map or a diagram or a chart or whatever you like, the shape of Elizabethan and Jacobean comedy. Everyone clear? Trust me, it'll be great. Okay, yeah.
So like...
There's some great pieces of illustrations going on here. Could we have a few volunteers just to hold theirs up? There's a great one at the back that I'd really like to start with. Could you talk us through it?
Oh, right. Yeah, okay, so at the beginning here, we've done a line graph. Everything's fine and happy, illustrated by smiling faces and flowers and a heart. Then, chaos. There's a broken heart here, a mask, a man and a woman in a question mark, and a banana skin with ha 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 to show comic relief. And then at the end, we've got the line going back to kind of normal, and a man and a woman holding hands, and a wedding ring and a heart.
Brilliant. Round of applause. We've got one here. Go on, talk us through it.
Well, surprisingly similar, because we start off with it just being normal. Then there's a lot of gender confusion. It's very typical. And also the fact that all the female parts were being played by males anyway. So given today's drag acts and transsexuals and all the whole gender confusion that goes on, simultaneously there's a subplot which is somebody else manipulating it for their own reasons, which is typical in Jacobean and Shakespeare, with even with Othello, and you know. So, and then at some point there's the revealing or the great explosion of everybody finding out what's actually going on, which usually ends up with marriage back at the church.
Fabulous, thank you. Round of applause. And we've got time to hear from one more, if there's a volunteer group to share theirs with us. Yep, over here, good.
So we had a similar theme, but we actually started off with man in drag, so we've given a man fake boobies and a beard and everything. Through time we had drama versus time. We identify the character, then we give him a problem, then there are some Shakespearean insults thrown around and bandied about here and there. Some made-up words to confuse the audience, and then over time we get towards the moral of the tale, which we had more made-up words for, and that was our graph.
I mean, I think some of you have been peeking at our notes, because actually that anticipates a lot of the stuff we're hoping to look at today. Especially the idea of our expectation. Did anyone else have that same basic shape, even if it was in a different form, of order into chaos and then order resumed? Oh wow! is that order into chaos?
That's a carrot.
These are 2 carrots. And a question mark between them with one worm. In fact, this stands for what you have on the outside is not you have on the inside.
Very good.
An
Don't trust the
ordinary situation comes to be something which is unexpected and full of fun and surprises.
Lovely, great, yes. One of the things we're hoping to explore is the idea of a comic ending. And we're going to look very briefly at 2 endings from Shakespeare in a second. Before we then look at, in much more detail, at the endings of 3 of Shakespeare's contemporaries. One played by John Lilly, who was a precursor to Shakespeare and enormously popular, and 2 plays by Ben Jonson, who was both a contemporary and continued writing after Shakespeare. Andy, do you want to...
Did you want to start with 2 sketches from Shakespeare?
Yeah, let's just look briefly. You guys got the text from Twelfth Night, Love Labour's Lost. So we're just going to hear first a very brief conversation between Barone and Ferdinand at the end of Love Labour's Lost. Love Labour's Lost is very much a typical comedy in the sense that you've been describing. There are 4 couples, 4 men, 4 women. Actually, there are 5 couples if you include the comic subplot. But in the main plot, there are 4 couples, and they all fall in love with each other. They all pair off really neatly, but then the king dies, and the play ends with the women having to go off unmarried, and the men being left single and frustrated on stage at the end. And this is what 2 of the men have to say about it.
Our wooing doth not end like an old play. Jack hath not Jill. These ladies' courtesy might have well made our sport a comedy.
Come, sir, it wants a 12-month and a day, and then 12 ends.
That's too long for a play.
So this sense that Barone's aware he's in a comedy, but that this isn't ending like one, is quite important. This could have been a comedy, he suggests, but it's not. It'll be over in a year, says the king, but no, that's too long for a play, he replies. I want now to look, and this will particularly please those of you who are interested in men dressed as women and androgyny. At the end of Twelfth Night, Viola has been dressed as a boy for the entirety of Twelfth Night, and Orsino, who Ross will be playing, addresses the final lines of the play to her, but still in her male identity as a boy. They've decided to get married, now he's discovered she's really a female, but he addresses her as Cesario. In the meantime, the rest of the characters are concerned with the outcome of the plot concerning Malvolio, played here by Joey, who has been tricked by the clown, played here by Ollie, into making a complete fool of himself. And Olivia, played by Dermot, with whom Malvolio is in love, is sort of attempting to just straighten out all the cross wires here. So let's just hear from this brief excerpt from the end of Twelfth Night.
Alas, poor fool, how they have baffled me.
Why, some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. I was one, sir, in this interlude, one Sir Topaz, sir, but that's all one. By the Lord Fool, I am not mad. But do you remember? Madam, why laugh you not at such a barren rascal, and you smile not, he's gagged. And thus the whirligig of time brings in his revenges.
I'll be revenged on the whole pack of you.
He hath been most notoriously abused.
Pursue him and entreat him to a peace. Meantime, sweet sister, we will not part from hence. Cesario, come, for so you shall be while you are a man. But when in other habits you are seen, Orsino's mistress and his fancy's queen.
Okay, thank you. We're going to hand over to Andy now, who's going to talk about what we do for the rest of the session.
Yeah, lovely, thank you. So what we're showing you today is something that Steve and I have been doing for a while now with academic audiences, and this is our first sharing of it with public audiences, and really just improvising with text. Academics are crap at talking about theatre and performance and learning stuff on your feet. It's kind of the opposite of what academics do, which is hide in a library for 4 years, ignore everyone in the world, men come along and go, no, no, no. So we're trying to find a slightly more exciting way of engaging with performance. So these actors, bless their bravery, have not rehearsed what you're about to see and are experiencing it for the first time. And we're asking what the text does to their bodies, to their sense of character, and to the audience as they do that. So this is very experimental. Ella talked about challenging authority, and I think that 2 ways in which we're challenging authority are by trying to rethink the idea of comedy and by trying to rethink Shakespeare's role in the idea of comedy. The 2 writers we're looking at now, John Lilly and Ben Jonson, were much more visible in Shakespeare's time than Shakespeare. John Lilly was the best-selling writer of Shakespeare's lifetime. He was England's first novelist, England's first playwright, and he's a best-selling writer for 60 years. And then the English Civil War happens, and people are too busy killing one another to read plays, and so Lilly drops off the map, Shakespeare drops off the map, and Jonson drops off the map. And it's only about 200 years after Shakespeare's lifetime that he comes to be celebrated as the great writer. And there are lots of ways in which Shakespeare is brilliant, but he's an incredibly conservative figure in lots of other ways. And his relationship with comedy is a good example of that. Shakespeare likes to end with a heterosexual union, and he likes to end with a heterosexual union which is happy. We've just looked at 2 extracts which contest that a little bit. They play with that. So Love's Labour's Lost, or it's not quite like a comedy, we'll get married in a year, see you later. And Twelfth Night kind of going, boy, who is a girl, fantastic, etc. And Malvolio saying, you know, I will revenge myself on you. That's not really a very happy ending, is it? So what we're looking at with our other 3 plays, John Lilly's Galatea, which is, I'll tell you quickly the play titles. John Lilly's Galatea and Ben Jonson's Bartholomew Fair and Epicene. What we're looking at are far more radical versions of comedy, much more bitter in the case of Johnson, I think, and much more gay in the case of Lilly. Lilly, as I say, is the first playwright in this period. He's inventing the form which Shakespeare then plays with. And you're going to see Lilly sending 2 girls off to church to get married. That's in 1584. That's still a pretty provocative idea in the modern era, so imagine what that's like in Elizabeth's reign, performed in front of Elizabeth. And Shakespeare never recovers from Galatea. Every single one of his comedies quotes Galatea at some point and uses Galatea. It's one of his major sources for all of his comedies, about 12 plays. Cross-dressing, running away into a wood, falling in love, but falling in love with someone who seems to be the wrong gender. Or in this case, seems to be the right gender, but is secretly not. Oh no. And then we will move on, as I say, to Johnson, where we will be seeing Epicene, which Steve's going to introduce you to in just a moment, and then Bartholomew Fair. Some of the things for you to think about are, what is plot in these plays? How does plot work? Because I think these playwrights plot in much more in ways which are more exciting than Shakespeare, because we now take Shakespeare's plot for granted. Those lovely loops you've just been doing, your graphs, and your carrots. These 2 playwrights we're meeting now are much less carroty and graphy. Is that enough intro for now, do you think, Steve? Is there anything else you want to say?
Well, I might just do a quick intro to Galatea.
Yeah, do you?
Great. So first off, we're going to look at Galatea by Lilly. We're going to look at an earlier scene, about 2/3 of the way through the play first, just to set up the characters for you. You 2 aren't in the front, so do take a seat, or wherever you prefer. You will have noticed that, of course, our cast this morning is entirely male. That's partly an accident, but it's also a useful accident in that, of course, these plays, regardless of gender, these characters, I mean, regardless of gender, would have been played by men or boys. So the 2 characters you're about to see are both female characters. Nonetheless, we're sort of in line with original practices here. Both female characters are being played by men. Now, just to confuse you even further, we've got Galatea and Philida. Both of them have been dressed up as boys by their fathers in order to save their lives. Gone off into the forest, of course. In the forest they've met each other, and thinking the other is a boy, fallen in love with each other. Ross and Dermot will be playing girls playing boys in this exchange. Yes, indeed. In this exchange they've just started to suspect the other of being really, underneath it all, a girl. So over to these guys.
What doubtful speeches be these? I fear he is as I am, a maiden.
What dread riseth in my mind? I fear the boy to be as I am, a maiden.
Tush, it cannot be. His voice suggests the contrary.
Yet I do not think it, for he would have blushed.
Have you ever a sister?
If I had but one, my brother must needs have 2. But I pray, have you ever a one?
My father had but one daughter, and therefore could have no sister.
Ay me! He is as I am, for his speeches be as mine are.
What shall I do? Either he is subtle, or my sex simple.
I have known diverse of Diana's nymphs enamoured of him, yet hath he rejected all, either as too proud to disdain, or too childish to understand, or for that he knoweth that he is a virgin.
I am in a quandary. Diana's nymphs have followed him, and he despised them, even knowing too well the beauty of his own face, or that himself is of the same mould. I will try him once again. You promised me in the woods that you would love me before all Diana's nymphs.
Aye, so you would love me before all Diana's nymphs.
Can you prefer a fond boy as I am before so fair ladies as they are?
Why should I not, as well as you?
Come, let us into the grove and make much of one another, but cannot tell what to think of one another.
say that is one of my favourite shallot lines of all time. Let us into the grove and make much of one another. I bequeath it to you. Report back on how it works in shut-up line.
Yeah, just to unpick a few things about that before we see the final scene featuring these two characters, is there's just some mind-bending, gender-bending going on here. We've got on stage, we've got boys dressed as boys trying to perform masculinity convincingly, flirting with one another. We've got two female characters flirting with one another, and when they start to suspect that the other is indeed female, they still refer to them using the masculine pronoun. So it's incredibly complex, and the whole play really enjoys that tension and that blurring of boundaries. We're going to see how it all resolves now. So for this we're going to need some deities. So you've got some scripts amongst you. Could I have just a volunteer? There's just a few lines here and there to play Neptune, Diana and Cupid. We don't have that. Great, thank you. So Diana, Neptune, and someone to play Cupid. Stay where you are, it's fine. And someone to play Cupid. It's about 3 words. Anyone?
No one wants to be the god of love.
Great, the god of love at the back there. Do you have a script? Has anyone got a spare one? Okay, so we're on the, those of you with the pack, we're on the second page now. Enter Galatea and Philida. This is my daughter, my sweet Philida. Yeah, everyone found it, especially those who are reading? It's on the second page of your pack. Page 104, it says at the top. So Diana, Neptune, have you found it? Yeah. It says, Neptune, well, your deserts have not gotten pardoned, but he's got us his jars. Cupid, are you with us at the back there?
I found the page.
You found the page, good. It's all right, gods, stay where you are. You're joined by another god. Joey is playing Venus, goddess rather. Joey's playing Venus. And these two are the fathers of Philida and Galatea. It'll all end absolutely beautifully. So here we go. The final scene of Galatea.
Ah, this is my daughter, my sweet Philida.
And this is my fair Galatea.
Unfortunate Galatea, if this be Philida.
Accursed Philida, if that be Galatea.
And wast thou all this while enamoured with Philida, that sweet Philida?
And couldst thou dote upon the face of a maiden thyself, being one on the fair face of fair Galatea?
Do you both, being maidens, love one another?
I had thought the habit agreeable with the sex, and so burned with the fire of mine own fancy.
I had thought that in the attire of a boy there could have not lodged the body of a virgin, and was so inflamed with a sweet desire which I now find a sour deceit.
Now, things falling out as they do, you must leave these fond-found affections. Nature will have it so. Necessity must.
I will never love any but Philida. Her love is engraven in my heart with her eyes.
Nor I any but Galatea, whose faith is imprinted in my thoughts by her words.
An ideal choice, strange and foolish, for one virgin to dote on another and to imagine a constant face where there can be no cause of affection. How like you this, Venus?
I like well, and alack, they shall both be possessed of their wishes. For never shall it be said that nature or fortune shall overthrow love and faith. Is your loves unspotted, begun with truth, continued with constancy, and not to be altered till death?
Die, Galatea, if thy love be not so.
Accursed be thou, Philida, if thy love be not so.
Suppose all this, Venus, what then?
Then shall it be seen that I can turn one of them to be a man, and that I will.
Is it possible?
What is to love, and the mistress of love, unpossible? Was it not Venus that did the like with Isis and Ianthes? How say ye? Are ye agreed? One to be a boy presently.
I am content, so I may embrace Galatea.
I wish it so I may enjoy Philida.
Soft daughter, you must know whether I will have you as a son.
Take me with you, Galatea. I will keep you as I begat you. A daughter!
Titus, let yours be a boy, and if you will,
Mine shall not.
Mine shall not, for by that means my young son shall lose his inheritance.
Well, why then give him to be a maiden, and then there's nothing not?
If there be such changing, I would Venus could make my wife a man.
Why?
Because she loves always to play with men.
Well, you are both fond. Therefore, agree to this changing, or suffer your daughters to endure hard chance.
How say you, Tityrus? Shall we refer to Venus?
I am content because she is a goddess.
Neptune, will you not dislike it?
Not I.
Nor you, Diana?
Not I.
Cupid shall not?
I will not.
Then let us depart. Neither of them shall know whose lot it shall be until they come to the church door. One shall be. Doth it suffice?
And satisfy us both. Doth it not, Galatea?
Yes, Philida.
Then follow us.
How do you guys feel about that ending? Is that a very straight ending? Is it a very gay ending? Is it doing odd things to those ideas in the first place? Any thoughts? Any thoughts at all? It's a what? It's a conforming ending. Right, one of them's going to become a male, so it's going to be a straight union, sorry.
No, because it turned into a man.
Yeah, so it's turned into a man, so it's straightened out. Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Not that I know.
Any thoughts? Any other thoughts? I'm struck by the fact that the thing we see is two girls going off to the church to get married in a culture which really can't discuss homosexuality at all. And so, although the text is saying one thing, what we see, the people's bodies that we see, is saying something else. Two girls going off to church, or if you will, two boys going off to church, depending which version you're seeing.
Is it true they couldn't? I mean, maybe they didn't need to discuss homosexuality because it wasn't an issue. I mean, it's not sex is a private act.
Yeah.
And there might be, as Gordon Fidel said, there are maybe homosexual acts, but not homosexual people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe that was, you know, most of the poets I know from that age, Marlowe and Shakespeare, are thought to have been gay, but it's no big deal.
Yeah,
So,
I think both heterosexuality and homosexuality are almost being invented in this period in lots of ways. And Marlowe's a great example.
Yeah.
Marlowe and Lily go to the same school, and Marlowe's reading Galatea as he writes some of his, there's a poem called Hero and Leander, which appears in Bartholomew Fair, which is very much about the invention of heterosexuality as well as homosexuality. It's got two lovers who keep trying to have sex and they haven't got a clue what to do. The boy thinks you just have to hug someone really hard in order to have sex, and the girl's kind of there going, you know, all that kind of stuff. But I think that relationship in the text, which says where there can be no cause of affection between two girls, in other words, where there is no penis, kind of what she's saying. The text is saying that, whilst the performance is saying something maybe that's in tension with that. Did you want to say?
Yeah, just, I mean, as far as watching the actors negotiate that was concerned, I was really struck by the exit and by this moment in which, well, when Galatea and Philip come together, what happens? What do you do? And I thought that was a really neat solution, but there are all kinds of possibilities there, aren't there? That, you know, do we see two boys dressed as boys, remember, join hands? Do we see one of them anticipating becoming the real boy? Or do we see both of them anticipating that in some sense? Neither of them? Is this relationship equal? If it's equal, then it sort of defies those kind of conventions of the compulsory heterosexuality at the end of a comedy that we were talking about earlier. So, I mean, I don't have an answer to that. I just wanted to draw attention to that moment. I thought it was really interesting to see that played out.
Yeah. The one thing that might also be worth saying is this is part of a suite of Lily plays, which are about girls falling in love with one another. So this is a topic which fascinates him. So as you're saying, there's very little sense that you can talk about homosexuality in the period, but he is finding ways to do that across plays. So this is part of a continuum. Should we move on to...
Yeah, the next play is Epicene, and this is by Johnson. It's much later than Lily. And we're going to skip straight to the final scene of Epicene. Epicene centres around Morose, who will be played by Joey. Morose is an old bastard who utterly hates noise. He hates noise pathologically. Johnson wrote comedies of what he called humours, people who are stuck in one particular mindset. And Morosi's mindset is that he hates noise. So everything must be silent. He teaches his servants to speak in sign language so they don't bother him with their voices. And he's also really mean and disinherits his nephew, Dauphine, who's going to be played by Ollie. In order to do this, he gets married. And so he searches high and low for a silent woman. It's quite a misogynistic play in many ways, this play. It finds Epicene, who was played by Ross, this silent woman. It rapidly becomes clear to him once he's married her, and he marries her halfway through the play. The marriage feast occurs halfway through the play. And it explodes into chaos as he rapidly discovers that Epicene is not silent after all and is in fact quite noisy. And threatens all the wedding guests with swords. And then spends the second half of the play desperately trying to get divorced. And invites Otter, who is, Dermot, and Cutbeard, who he thinks are a divorce lawyer and a parson, to advise him on how to get divorced. They tell him to declare himself impotent. He does. It doesn't work because she still accepts him. Again and again, he's trying to get divorced. He's at his wit's end. He can't get divorced from this noisy woman, Epicene, until finally Dauphine, in the moment we're about to see right at the end of the play, reveals a possible solution to his problem, but at a cost. Is that everything we need to know, I think?
Yeah, I think so.
Great, when you're ready, guys.
We're going, if you're following along, we're going from page 268, from line 144.
About halfway down the page.
Oh, my heart will now break! Will now break! This is the worst of all worst! The hell could have devised! Marry a whore! And so much noise!
Come on, I see now. Plain confederacy in this doctor and this parson to abuse a gentleman.
Sorry to interrupt. I need to cast some extra people. Sorry, before we get to the point that no one says anything. Sorry to interrupt. We need someone to read the one line of haughty. Anyone? It's one line.
Who's feeling haughty?
Somebody? Great. Haughty and centaur. We also just need a couple of people for Ollie to refer to. So don't worry, you don't get any lines, but I'm just going to pick on you two. You are gentlemen who bragged that you've slept with the Lady Epicene. And you are his...
Good bragging.
Don't worry, you don't have any lines. You are his, Ollie's friend Truewit. Don't worry, you don't have any lines, he just needs to refer to you at one point. Sorry about that, ladies and gents, I completely forgot about these lines. You do.
Come, I see now in plain confederacy, in this doctor and this parson, to abuse a gentleman. You study his affliction, I pray, be gone. And, gentlemen, I begin to suspect you of having parts with them. Sir, would you please hear me?
Oh, do not talk to me. Take not from me the pleasure of dying in silence, nephew.
Sir, I must talk to you. I have long been your poor, despised kinsman, and many a hard thought has been strengthened from you against me. But now it shall appear, if either I love you or your peace, and prefer them to all the world besides, I will not be long and grievous to you, sir, if I free you from this unhappy match, absolutely and instantly, and after all this trouble, and almost in your despair. Now,
it cannot be,
sir, that you be never troubled with a murmur of it more. What shall I hope for or deserve from you?
What thou wilt, nephew, what thou wilt deserve from me, and have me.
Shall I have your favour perfect for me, and your love hereafter?
Oh, that and anything beside, and make thine own conditions. My whole estate is thine. Manage it, I will become thy ward.
Oh, nay, sir, I would not be so unreasonable.
Will Sir Dauphin be my enemy too?
You know, I have been long a suitor to you, uncle, and that of your estate, which is 1,500 a year. You would allow me but 500 during life, and assure the rest upon me after, to which I have often by myself and friends tendered you in writing to sign, which you would never consent or incline to. If you please, would you effect it now?
Thou shalt have it, nephew. I will do it more.
If I quit you, not presently and forever, of this cumber, you shall have power instantly, and for all these to revoke your act, and I will become whose slave you will give me forever.
Where is the writing? I will seal to it, that or to a blank, and write thine own conditions.
Oh, me most unfortunate, wretched gentlewoman. Will Sir Dauphin do this? Good sir, have some compassion on me.
Oh, my nephew knows he will be like away crocodile!
Does it not? Sure, without the crown.
Here, sir. Come, nephew, give me the pen. I will subscribe to it. And seal it to thy will for thy deliverance. Thou art the restorer. Here, I deliver you this deed. If there be a word in it lacking or writ with false orthography, I protest before I will not take advantage.
Well, then here is your release, sir. You have married a boy! You are beholden! A gentleman's son that I have brought upon this half year as my great charges, and for this composition which I have now made for you. What say you, Master Doctor? This is justum impendium, or I hope, or error personae?
Yes, sir, in primo gradu.
In primo gradu.
I thank you, good Dr. Cupbeard, Parson Otter. You are beholden to them, sir, that they have taken their pains from you, and my friend, Master Truitt, who enabled them for the business. Now, you may go and you may rest. Be as private as you will, sir. I will not trouble you, so you trouble me with your funeral, and I care not how soon that is. Cupbeard, I'll make your lease good. Thank me not, but with your leg, Cupbeard. And Tom Otter, your princess shall be reconciled to you. How now, gentlemen, do you look at me?
And we're going to cut it short there. Thank you. So just to fill you in on what happens in the rest of the scene, Truitt then it begins a big closing speech in which he humiliates the two gentlemen who've claimed to have slept with Epicene, and they too leave the stage like morose in humiliation as outsiders. So a kind of distinctly unsavoury, unhappy sort of ending, in that it's largely about humiliation, and the happy ending is achieved through a divorce, or rather an annulment, technically. Andy, do you want to add it?
Well, the only person who has a happy ending is the guy who says, just there, how now, gentlemen, do you look at me? And you kind of just think, what a cock. He's just someone who there's no way you could relate to, no way you could be pleased with this person having a happy ending. So again, your graphs or your carrots, the one person who's getting that kind of whoop is the one person you kind of think, give him a good kicking. So a very dissatisfying ending from a Shakespearean perspective.
I noticed there are a few laughs of disbelief at the line, I'll not trouble you till you trouble me with your funeral, which I care not how soon it comes. Off you go, out you get. So yeah, distinctly mean-spirited sort of ending there. But similarly androgynous. Of course, the joke here is that for Johnson's audience, they would have known from the very start that Epicene was being played by a boy, because all female characters were played by a boy. So again, an interesting double joke there, as it's revealed that in fact Epicene, within the world of the play, is also a boy, who appears in the play's very first scene, actually. But we don't, as an audience, we're not let in on that scene. We're not told that Epicene is really a boy.
So we're fooled as well. The audience is fooled as well. Should we skip on to?
Let's skip on to Bartholomew Fair. Yeah.
This is our final sketch.
Shall I do a quick? Yeah. So Bartholomew Fair is one of Johnson's most experimental comedies. It's later than Epicene, and it's in many ways a kind of sketch show. If you imagine a Jacobean version of Little Britain, that's pretty much what it is. There's very little of a through line to it. There's one character who I'll be playing very briefly, Justice Overdue, who's in disguise and witnessing everything. So he's kind of the eyes and ears of the whole play. But really, it's a series of vignettes, a series of sketches painting everyday life and types from everyday life. In this version, we're seeing at the fair of the title a puppet show being performed. Leatherhead is running the show. He's a bit of a crook, and this is the puppeteer. However, the Puritan, who's called Busy, is about to interrupt this, and as real Puritans did in real life, have all kinds of objections to the theatre and performance on the grounds of its immorality and, as he points out, its androgyny. We've got various other characters who are in the audience of this puppet show, who once again we'd like to ask you to play. Andy's going to play Edgeworth. Ross, where's Ross? Ross is going to play Tim Nice but Dim type character called Bartholomew Copes. I'm going to be at the back playing Justice Overdue, and we just want some people to read some extra lines. Someone to read the line for Knockham. Great, Knockham. Someone to read the line for Winwife. Great, thank you. Someone to read the line for Grace. Great, thank you. Could you, once again, don't worry, you don't have to speak, but you will be Numps. So he refers to someone called Numps, so that's you that way. Imagine yourselves as audience members at a puppet show at Bartholomew Fair, which is just about to be... Oh yes, and sorry, one more thing. There is a shock moment at which we discover a moment of androgyny. Let's have a communal gasp from all of you. You'll see it when it comes. Okay.
This tragical encounter falling out thus to busy us, it raises up the ghost of their friend and Dionysus, not like a monarch but the master of a school, in a scrivener's furred gown which shows he is no fool, for therein he hath wit enough to keep himself warm. "O Damon," he cries, "and Pythias, what harm hath poor Dionysus done to you in his grave? After that his death you should fall out thus and rave, and call amorous Leander, whoremaster knave."
I could not, I will not, I promise you in jury.
Down with Dagon! Down with Dagon! It is I who no longer endure your profanation!
What mean you, sir?
I will remove Dagon here. I say that that's idle. That's heathenish idol that remains, as I may say, a beam. A very beam. Not a beam of the sun, not a beam of the moon, nor a beam of balance, nor a house beam, nor a weaver's beam, but a beam in the eye of the brethren. A very great beam, an exceeding great beam, such as you stage players, rhymers, and modest dancers who have walked hand in hand in contempt of the brethren of the cause and been borne out by instruments of no mean countenance.
Sir, I present nothing but what is licensed by authority.
Thou art all license, even licentiousness itself, silly!
I have the master of the revel's hand fort, sir.
The master of rebels hand thou hast. Satan's! Hold thy peace, thy stolidity, shut up thy mouth, thy profession is damnable, and in pleading for it, thou dost plead for Baal. I have long opened my mouth wide and gaped, and I have gaped as the oyster for the tide after the destruction, but cannot compass it by suit or dispute, so that I look for a bickering ere long, and then a battle.
Good Banbury bakers. Friend, you have an ill match on it if you bicker with him here. Though he be no man on the fish, he has friends that will go to the cut for him. Numps, and will you not take our side?
No? Sir, it shall not need. In my mind he offers him a fairer course to end it by disputation. Hast thou nothing to say for thyself in defence of thy quality?
Faith, sir, I am not well studied in these controversies between the hypocrites and us. But here's one of my motion. Puppet Dionysus shall undertake him, and I'll venture the cause on.
Who? My hobby horse? Will he dispute with him?
Yes, sir, and make a hobby ass of him. I hope.
That's excellent. Indeed, he looks like the best scholar of them all. Come, sir. You must be as good as your word now.
I'll not fear to take my spirit and gifts known. Assist me, zeal. Fill me, that is, make me full.
What a desperate, profane wretch is this? Is there any ignorance or impudence like his? To call his zeal to fill him against a puppet?
I know no fitter match than a puppet to commit with a hypocrite.
First I say to thee, idle, thou hast no calling.
You lie. My name is Dionysus.
The motion says you lie, he is called Dionysus in the matter, and to that calling he answers.
I mean, no vocation, idle, no present lawful calling.
And thou hast a lawful calling?
The motion asketh if yours be a lawful calling.
Yes, mine is of the spirit.
Then idle is lawful calling.
He says then idle is a lawful calling. But for you called him idle, and your calling is of the spirit.
Well disputed, holy horse!
Take not the part of that wicked young gallant. He neigheth hideous. profane. It is profane. Idle.
It is not profane.
It is profane.
It is not profane.
It is profane.
It is not profane.
Well said. Confuse with him not still. You cannot bear him down with your bass noise, sir.
Nor he me with his treble creaking, though he creak like the chariot wheels of Satan. I am zealous for the cause.
As a dog for a bone.
And I say it is profane, as being the page of pride and the waiting room woman of vanity.
Yeah? What say you to your tire woman then?
Good.
Or feather makers of the friars that are your faction of faith? Are not they with their perukes and their puffs and their fans and their puffs as mere pages of pride and waiters upon vanity? And what say you? What say you? What say you?
I will not answer for them!
Because you cannot! Because you cannot is a bugle maker and a lawful calling, or the confect makers such you have there, or your French fashioner. You have all the sin within yourselves, would you not? Would you not?
No, Dagon.
What then, Dagonet? It's a puppet worse than these.
Yes, and my main argument against you is that you are an abomination. For the male amongst the pure, for the male amongst you putteth on apparel of the female, and the female of the male.
You lie! You lie abominably! Goodbye, Maestro. He has given him the lie thrice. It is your own stale argument against the players, but it will not hold against the puppets, for we have neither male nor female amongst us, and that thou mayest see, if thou wilt, like a malicious purple brine zeal as thou art.
By my faith, he's answered you, friend, by plain demonstration.
Nay, I'll prove against it, the rabbin of them all, that by standing as lawful as his, that I speak by inspiration as well as he, that I have as little to do with learning as he, and do scorn the help as much as he.
I am confuted. The cause hath failed me.
Be converted. Be converted.
Be converted, I pray you, and let the play go on.
Let it go on, for I am changed. And I will become a beholder to you.
Let's pray, me faith. Thou hast carried away Hobbyhorse. On with the play.
Stay! Now do I forbid. I, Adam Overdue. Sit still, I charge you. And then a new episode starts. Thank you very much, ladies and
gentlemen. One of the things we're showing you at Bartholomew Fair is a play that has no plot in any of the traditional sense of the term. It is, as Steve said, almost a set of kind of meditations on what a person is. And so the nearest we get to a climax, to a resolution, is basically puppets going, I've got no genitals, and a Puritan kind of going, oh, well, in that case, I'm not really a Puritan anymore. That's the closest this play gets to a climax. So again, going back to your graphs, definitely no carrot this time. I don't know what the vegetable for no genitals is, but anyway, insert the correct vegetable there. Any other thoughts that you wanted to?
I mean, I guess one thing that is worth teasing out here is that all three of these plays, there is some sense of irresolution from androgyny. And I think that's something that we also see in Shakespeare, that Shakespeare tends to close things off more neatly. The End of As You Like It, for example, Rosalind reappears in a dress, and oh phew, everyone's heterosexual again. But in all three of these plays, there's a note hanging in the air, a sense that comedy might actually throw things up and leave them in chaos, in disorder, because disorder and chaos is more interesting in many ways than tying everything together and neatening it all up. Bartholomew Fair, in many ways, is quite a neat ending in that after one more denouement, everyone goes off and has a feast together. But certainly in Epicene, the feast happens halfway through the play. It's really awful, and the play ends on a deeply cynical note. So I suppose what we're interested in doing here is perhaps just reintroducing some of these plays into the conversations we have about Shakespearean drama, broadly speaking, and thinking about whether, in fact, there are works by some of Shakespeare's contemporaries that use comedy in much more radical, much more probing, much more, I suppose, unresolved ways than Shakespeare does.
Yeah, thank you.
And then if it's all right to kind of say a final thing, and I think we should wrap up. The other thing I want to think about, again in relation to Ella talking about comedy and authority, is that, well, is comedy a conservative form? That notion that the play begins happy, it all goes wrong, and then finally everything gets resolved as to where it was at the beginning. You know, is that a very conservative form? And certainly in relation to class, Shakespeare's someone who doesn't seem to like working class characters very much. Those of you who know Bottom in Midsummer Night's Dream, for example, with Dogberry Much Ado About Nothing. The first thing Shakespeare does when he earns money is buy himself a knighthood. You know, he's very interested in the, working his way up through society. Whereas with Bartholomew Fair, what we're watching is ordinary people at a fair watching a puppet show. And we have a real interest in kind of everyday people, I suppose. Galatea and Phillida, despite their not everyday names, are themselves everyday villagers. And so I think relationship between class and comedy and the conservative kind of import of comedy, conservative energy that comedy brings, is what we've been looking at here, the way that these plays contest that conservative impact. Yeah. Do you want to say anything more?
No, aside from unless the actors have anything to add from the perspective of actually playing these things. Yeah, Joe.
I was wondering if the lack of sort of conventional resolution is sometimes for practical reasons, because a man playing a woman playing a man is more convincing than a man playing a woman. And so when you get the plays done in all male productions where you do have the final reveal, oh, it's a girl, it never works very well. And so it might partly be a practical concern to not end it that way.
Very possibly.
Yeah.
Lovely. I think
what you've taken us back to in this whole sequence is another contemporary quotation. There's nothing right or wrong, but thinking makes it so.
Imagining new kinds of worlds. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. I think we should certainly end it on that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.